Hi, I'm Danielle Direcno, and I'm going to be giving you your basic process building training today. So the first thing we're going to do is create a new process under the administration section and click Add Process and New and give it a name and choose a category and save it. So this process flow tab is going to be the first section that you're brought to when creating a new process. You're going to be dragging and dropping these standard tasks or integration tasks into the environment right here. It's a blank canvas, and the only thing that's going to be on the page is the start process. So first I'll go through what all of these tabs up here are. So the process flows are going to be where you're building. Tasks, this is going to be a list of all the tasks that you've added to your process with the definition, ID, the name, everything like that. You can see the information here. This request detail config tab, this is going to be an area where users will see under the request detail in a process. So this is going to provide all the information in the specific request, and you can customize what the layout looks like and depending on what information you want to be displayed. This KPI tab, this is going to be key performance indicators, where you can define and generate metrics that display real-time data and show the times between tasks. You can display different charts and targets for task completion as well. This process detail tab is going to be where a lot of information is, so you can change the name here, the publish status, the category, any attachments, and then all of these options with descriptions and advanced settings, and you can also set like a time limit. But the main thing here on this page is the publish status. So all processes are in development mode by default for the user or the administrator to test the process. So we have more details on our help site about what each publish status looks like and what they do. And then here under Run Request, you will be able to quickly run a test of your process by selecting this and then click Start a Request. Next, I'm going to be going over all of these tabs right here. So refresh, that's just going to be useful in the situation where you make changes, or if you have your process open in another browser and another admin makes a change, you'll want to just refresh. Auto arrange, this is going to be different options for organizing the task in the flow. Print options, this is print preview, poster print preview, and show. It's going to open a new window for each of them. Zoom, you're going to be able to zoom in and out, fit to your window, and viewing the actual size. This is very useful for larger processes. For connection style, you'll have to click on one of the arrows in a process when they're all connected to the task types, and then click on it here. So this will give you different shapes of the transition lines between tasks. And then you can choose one of your choice. And indicators, this is going to allow you to display either the rules that will trigger tasks in the process or the recipients in the process. So you would be able to click on the indicator here and click display rules or display recipients, and it would just show up right here in this text. But since we haven't configured anything yet, it won't show much. Next, I'm going to go over the task menu options. So when you have a task and you drag and drop it in and you hover over here, you can see there's configuration, recipients, copy task, and delete task. So under configuration, you can see edit detail. This is going to be the basic name, description, and notes, and these different options right here. So this is a way that you can change the name of the form. Another way to change the name of the form is double clicking on the task and editing it from here. The next option under the task menu under configuration is configure task. This is going to be different based on the task type, but for form, this is where you're going to import the form that you create here. So once you create a form, you're going to be able to add it here. Once you save the form, you're going to see that advanced settings just became available. This is going to be a really good tip for when you're editing your processes down the line. If you're making changes to things, doing mappings, anything like that, down the line in the process, you're always going to want to go back into the form under advanced settings and make sure to import those fields. So you're going to go under fields to capture and import fields, and prefill settings, import fields. Sometimes these fields won't be showing up in another section of the process, so you got to make sure to import those fields here under Configure Task. Save it. The next option under Configuration is Configure Rules, and this is going to be where you're going to define business rules for the specific task. Next one is Display Settings. This is the settings for how the task is displayed to the recipient in the request detail. Next one is Notification Settings. This is going to be able to define the email settings and text for a subject and body of the email when it is assigned to a recipient. Next is Reminders and Timeouts. This is going to be configuring time-based settings, reminder intervals, timeout thresholds, and due date displays. Advanced Settings is a configuration dealing with loopbacks, threading, and canceling a task on timeouts. Dynamic Names. That's using source data from a process to dynamically name a request and/or task. Next is Recipients. This is where you're going to assign users, groups, or roles to a task. Then next under Recipient is Assignment Settings. This is allowing the task recipients to reassign or cancel tasks. Then we have Copy Tasks. This is just going to be a copy of the specific task that you just created. And Delete Task. Self-explanatory, just deletes it. Next, if you are under the form here and you add the form under Configure Task, this Form Designer option pops up here. So this is going to allow you to be able to see the form in the process and make changes right here. You can add, drag and drop, and make changes to those tasks here. Exit out, and then it'll be updated. But you got to make sure to remember to go under Configure Task if you make any changes and import those fields under these fields to capture and pre-fill settings. So the next thing that I'm going to go over is going through all these standard tasks and integration tasks and what they do. This approval task is going to allow users to have approval options. You could do approve, deny, need more information, or any options that you really want. So what you're going to be doing here to configure it is under Configure Task. This is where you're going to add the options for the approval. So approve, deny, like that. Then you're going to exit out. So now that they have those options, the only thing you're going to have to do here is add recipients. So another tip for when you're creating processes, you can see that most of these tasks, when you add them in, you can see that they have these little exclamation points near the icons. You can see that right there. So this first one that on the form, that's because there's no form added. So you got to go under Configuration and Configure Task and add that form in. This little person with the exclamation point, that shows that there's no recipients assigned. So you'll have to add those in. So that's what you're seeing here for the approval. Now that we've added those options under Configure Task, now it's looking for a recipient. So once you add a recipient, that exclamation point goes away. Next, we have the counter task. So this is going to allow you to count the number of times that it has been completed. So if you have like a loop back situation where a need more information is an option and an approval. So it'll restrict or count back the number of paths that it can take or the number of times that it can happen. So you can define another branch of the workflow based on the number of times that the counter task has been completed. Next is Data Container. This task allows you to create a custom endpoint that can receive JSON data and stores it as an instance data in your Integrify database. So this is assigned or designed to be completed by an API post. So once the workflow reaches the data container task, the endpoint is prepped to wait for data to be posted to it. And then once the data is posted, the workflow moves forward. Next, we have the developer form task. With this task type, you can design pure HTML forms or use unfiltered JavaScript, include script libraries, and also define your own CSS style. So this is useful when you require full control over the look and the feel of the form. Next, we have Dynamic Assigner. This is going to allow the use of SQL and collected form data to define task recipients. Next, we have Dynamic Notification. This is going to allow email notifications to be sent to a dynamic list of recipients based on email addresses provided in a form. Next, we have Excel Batch. This is going to be used to launch requests based on individual data within an Excel spreadsheet. The Excel import task, this is going to upload an Excel spreadsheet into a process. It'll be able to define business rules based on data within the cells of the uploaded Excel document. This can also be used to have data defined approval routing rules within the process and dynamically assign approvers based on Excel data. Next one we have is the form task. This is probably the most commonly used. This is where your forms are going to be and adding them here under configure task like I showed you earlier. This is going to be forms that you have constructed within your Integrify library. You can use the form task multiple times throughout the process with different forms as well. The form assigner task gives an end user the option to decide who will complete future specific tasks by answering questions in a form. So in addition to assigning specific recipients to other tasks, the process administrator can also allow the user to set these options, such as due dates, reminders, timeouts, start dates, and user task priority. FTP push is going to allow a process to transfer a file generated from one of the PDF task types or directly from a file attachment question from a form to an FTP server. Next one we have is general notification. This is a task that's used to send notifications via email to any user, group, or role of individuals within Integrify. By sending the user the notifications, you're not giving them a specific task to do within the process, but just sending information and giving them access to the request that is executed. Launch requests. This is going to allow parent requests to launch related requests with unique request IDs and their own process definitions. Next, we have the milestone task. So the primary purpose of this is that it's going to set the overall status for a process. Each time a milestone is executed within a request, it will update the current status for that particular request on a user's dashboard. The open URL task, it's going to launch a specific URL as part of the process flow, so the site can be launched in a new window and can reference remote or internal URLs, and then data from the request can be passed using parameters. The next one we have is a PDF generator task. This is going to populate a PDF form with values from Integrify or data entered on an Integrify form. PDF merge is going to give administrators a way to combine up to 5 PDF documents into a single file. So these PDFs can be uploaded or created using our PDF generator task. Task assigner is going to enable the manual assignment of a user or group of users. It's often used in scenarios where individuals who are required to do specific tasks change frequently. So the task assigner requires someone to make the decision. Task scheduler, this is going to allow users to schedule when future tasks will start, and the users will have the ability to pick a date from the calendar, the hour of the day, and the time zone that the task will start. Next, we have user profile. This is going to enable the process administrator to define a process that lets end users update specific portions of their contact profile. So most commonly used when the process administrator wants to create a process that enables them to reset their password. Next, we'll be going over these integration tasks here. So the AWS Lambda task is a serverless service that runs your code in response to events and automatically manages the underlying resources for you. Next, we have database pull. This is going to enable customers to create custom parameterized queries, and that executes within the process and retrieves query results into a form. Database push is going to allow you as a process administrator to design processes that will communicate directly with other database systems in your organization. REST client, so this is where you can configure processes to consume RESTful web services. This task is commonly used to push or pull information for other systems that have a web service API. And then we have web service tasks. So you can configure processes to post data to a web service using a query string and allowing Integrify to push data to another system. So now that we've gone through all the standard task types and the integration task types, we're going to just create a short, simple process just so I can show you a few little tips and tricks. So usually the first thing in the process that you're going to have is a form. So here we're going to add one in the configure task. We'll do a quote and save. Then also you can rename it here. Now you can see it needs a recipient. So usually the first form in a process is always assigned to the recipient. So here we go to dynamic and choose the requester. So the requester is going to be assigned this first form, especially if they're kicking that request off. They're the first person it's going to go to. Then after the form, usually we would add a milestone. So we're going to name this milestone initial price quote completed. So now once someone completes that form, it's going to show up and say, okay, it was completed. This milestone is completed. Then after the milestone, we're going to add an approval. So we'll do quote approval. And then under configuration and configure task is where we're going to add those options. So we'll do approve, deny, and need more information. Close that out. Now this also needs a recipient here. So we're going to go to recipients and let's say that it would be going to accounting. We'll add the accounting group. And that's that. So you can see as you're building here, the tasks are just going wherever. If you want to auto arrange them, what I like to do is just choose the horizontal flow and they'll all just stay in line here. And then once you add some rules in and stuff, you can start messing with the connection style and the indicators. So after the quote approval, here's where you're going to start adding a few more milestones. So based on if this was approved, denied, or need more information, it's going to go different paths. So let's do one milestone for approved. Do another one for deny. And do another one for need more information. So here you can see all these milestones just stacked right on top of each other. I go right back into auto arrange, horizontal, and then they all arrange themselves. So now here, let's say the manager in accounting completed this quote approval. Well, now what path is it going to go down? So we need to create some rules. So we're going to go up into the approved milestone under configuration and configure rules. Right now, the first rule that's already in here is if the quote approval is completed, but we want to add a rule. So what we're going to do is select data. We're going to choose the quote approval, and this will only go down this path if the quote approval choice is approved. So we're going to add that rule, and now we see that the rule is here, and exit out. We're going to do the same thing for deny. We're going to go to data, quote approval choice is deny. Same thing with need more information. We'll only go down this path if they choose need more information for that approval. So now, once it is approved, if you want it to send, let's say we're going to send a general notification. So we're going to notify CEO. So we're going to have that here. Add the recipient. Let's say accounts receivable. Let's say they're the CEO today. There we go. So they're going to be notified that this choice was approved. Next, for deny, if it goes down the deny path, we're going to want it to end. So how we're going to do that is under Edit Detail, we're going to choose when this task completes, the process will end, and save it. Now you can see it just added this end process right here. So we're going to do the auto arrange again, make it look a little nicer, and end process. So after the CEO is notified, the process will also end. So you can also drag that right here. If the quote approval is selected as need more information, we're going to want it to go back to the initial price quote form to the requester so they can add more information that the manager might have requested. So we're going to take an arrow and connect it back to the form. So after rerouting this back to need more information, we're going to need to go into this form under rules and make sure that this is changed to an or. So to explain, if you were to start this process and kick it off, it wouldn't necessarily be able to be completed because this need more information milestone hadn't been completed yet. So we need to make that an or under the rules. The way you do it is you just double click and select which option you want. So for this one, we're just allowing it to reroute back to this form by selecting or. So let's go through a quick test of this process. We're going to click Run Request and Start. So we can just add some information in here. So now that the form was completed, it's going to be going to the quote approval. Since the process is in development mode, you're going to be getting all the tasks and all the notifications that would have been going out to those recipients. But right now you're just in development mode. So here we're going to select need more information and submit. Now this was just rerouted back to the original requester. So the process flow did what it did, the rules and the process flow, it did what it was supposed to do. It rerouted it back to the initial price quote form. And it'll go right back to the quote approval for approval with those changes that was made. So here we can see, okay, looks good, approve, submit, and that it was approved, and you can see that the Notify CEO option was completed. Go to the flow view here. It went as it should. It went through here, down to need more information, rerouted back to the form, went through the quote approval again, and once it was approved, it notified the CEO. Now you've learned the basics of process building, you can start building in your instance of Integrify.